questions that you want me to include in the True Crime Week, then let me know down below. I always like hearing about cases from you guys. But yeah, I hope you're looking forward to that. And yeah, today we are going back to True Crime Tuesdays. So today's case is going to be about the mysterious death of Betty Shanks. Now, this is a very popular case in Australia. Hi to any of my Australian subs out there. Yeah, it is one of the kind of most notorious unsolved murder cases in Australia, and for good reason, guys. This case is so strange. There are so many theories. It is quite different to the cases that I have done before. It's not like someone went missing for ages and their body was found weeks, months, years later. Betty's body was found very quickly, which usually indicates that the case would be solved. The sooner the body comes to light, normally the quicker it is to solve it. But unfortunately, not in this case. So yes, I am just gonna go straight ahead, and I hope you enjoy. So Betty Shanks was born in 1930 in Queensland, Australia, and there is not a lot of information about her childhood. I searched through loads of different kind of sources, and they were mainly concerned with the actual crime and the theories rather than her background, which I think is sad. But what I did find is that she was a very intelligent, ambitious and kind young woman. She had a great relationship with both of her parents. It is noted that she was extremely close with her father. They shared a really good kind of friendship, as a father and daughter, and she had studied arts with honours in psychology at the University of Queensland, and she was a really good student, so she graduated. I think she graduated just a year or so before her death. She had a very promising future. She was working as a personnel officer at the time of her death, and she was attending night classes at the university to aid alongside her job. So I'm not sure if she was doing a further qualification alongside her position, but yeah, she was still attending some night classes at the university. So yeah, things looked really bright for Betty. She was a smart young woman, she was ambitious, she was beautiful. Not that that matters, but she was beautiful. She was really just beginning her life, and sadly it all came to a very tragic and brutal she saw Betty walking down Thomas Street. So Thomas Street was just like a street or two over from Betty's house. So literally this girl, only had to walk down a couple of streets and then she'd be home, and her friend saw her walking that way. So it was clear that Betty was going home. That was her plan. She was going home. She wasn't going to meet somebody. That was what her intentions were. So very, very sadly, the friend that saw Betty walking down Thomas Street would be the last person to see her alive. Betty's body was found the next morning at 5:30 a.m. by a police officer that lived down the road, and her body had been severely beaten and she was dead. So Betty's body had been found behind a fence of a house, a fence next to a house on Carberry Street, and Carberry Street was just aligning Thomas Street. So police on the case very quickly kind of discovered the timeline that from the time that Betty departed from seeing her friend, which was around 9:34, and by the time that she would have reached Carberry Street, it means that Betty was murdered within 10 minutes of seeing her friend. So it is just so horrific, that one minute you are alive and going about your day, and then literally the next moment you could be dead. It is so horrifying. It is so sad that this happened to this poor girl. And yeah, so that is that for the crime. This just happened. It was so brutal and so quick, and that is the end of kind of the action of the case. So now I will kind of move on to the evidence of the crime scene. So this is now kind of how police at the time and how spectators across history, because of course this case happened like 60 years ago, 70 years ago, a lot of people have kind of put across lots of theories. So I will just talk about the evidence at the crime scene. So Betty was very violently beaten, and she was injured in such a way that would suggest that the person that did it was used to violence. So this is actually quite important because examiners at the scene concluded that the attack wasn't from somebody that, I don't know, was just going crazy. It wasn't just a random attack of maybe like a drunk person or something. This attack was perpetrated by somebody that knew how to hurt another human being. So that is quite important when it comes on to the theories as to who did this crime. The second thing that is quite elemental to the case is that Betty's body was found with a lot of traces of boot polish on it. So like shoe polish, boot polish was found on Betty's forehead, on her face and on her legs, which shows that she was kicked, potentially kicked to death in the head. It wasn't conclusive what her cause of death was because there were so many injuries. She sustained a very serious injury to the bottom part of her face, I believe, that kind of looked like a stab wound, but years ago. This was the 1950s, sorry. So technology just really wasn't what it is today, you know. When people are killed in today's world, it would take, examiners like 20 minutes, probably less than that, to find out what kind of weapons and things did the injuries. But we're going back in time here. They just didn't know, which is another reason as to why this case, I believe, is still unsolved. So the third clue found at the kind of scene of the crime was that there were two bloody handprints found on the fence, and the handprints were very large. So what this showed contemporaries at the time was that the murderer was most definitely a man, and quite a big man as well, because the handprints were bigger than the average man hands, I guess. Again, important information, because that kind of gives them a little idea as to who they are looking for. And the last major clue, which is one of the most confusing but the most important, is the fact that a very strange pattern of blood was found on Betty's forehead, and basically it was a pattern of dots and rectangles, very small. I would try and draw it for you guys, but that probably wouldn't help because I am not very good at drawing anything. But yeah, it was like a pattern of something, as in the way, as if something had been pressed. But it was important because it was a very unique pattern. The only way I could describe it to you guys is if you had like a sheet of bubble wrap and you covered it in paint and then you pressed it onto a piece of paper. There would obviously be a pattern, right, where the textures were. So the reason why this pattern was important to the case is that it shows a vital piece of evidence, and we will talk about that when we come to the theories, because potentially this pattern found on Betty's forehead is a major indicator as to who did it, but we will come on to that. Now we are going to move on to the kind of theories which makes up the main part of this case. The first thing is that both of Betty's parents said that she had no enemies. As far as they knew, there was no reason why anyone would want to hurt her, and that she hadn't had a boyfriend or a romantic interest in the last 12 months leading up to the murder. So as far as Betty's parents were aware, there was really nobody that would want to do this to Betty, which kind of indicated to police that this was likely a random attack. Now, this is just kind of like a personal opinion. It is seen, like in a lot of cases, that very sadly a lot of parents don't know what is truly happening in their children's lives. So although they believed that nobody would want to hurt Betty, they don't know that. So I wouldn't, as a spectator, I wouldn't completely brush off the idea that someone wanted to hurt Betty. I don't think this is 100% a random attack. I mean, of course it could be. I don't know. We don't know. Hopefully one day Korean War at that time, so there were a lot of soldiers around, and on that particular night there was a dress rehearsal for soldiers in the area, which meant that there were a ton of soldiers around and they were all kind of, gathering. So yeah, there were a lot of soldiers around, and the main reason why people think that it was a psychopathic soldier that did this to Betty is because of the boots. So the boots that soldiers wear and that were part of the uniform at the time were aligned with Betty's injuries. So the shape of the boots and kind of the impact of the boots, it was thought that the only real kind of shoe that could do that much damage was the heavy, big boots that were worn by soldiers at the time, as well as the boot polish found on Betty's body. Again, it was said that the soldiers, obviously, their uniform was meant to look good at all times, so they would keep their boots polished with black polish. So these things really kind of came together for people to kind of think, yeah, it could have been a soldier. Again, another important kind of aspect to this is that the pattern on Betty's forehead was kind of contingent with the fabric of the pattern of gaiters. I actually can't really say this word, a gaiter or a gaiter. Basically, it is like a boot cover that soldiers and other people, but soldiers wore on top of their boots around their calves. I'm not sure the exact kind of use for them. I guess maybe they keep your legs warm. I'm not sure. And yeah, the pattern found on Betty's forehead was contingent with a pattern that could possibly be made by this fabric worn by the soldiers. So again, that is other physical evidence to assume that it could have possibly been a travelling soldier in a sexually provoked attack. Another aspect to this theory is the fact that some sources say that Betty's body was found naked. I can't get a definite answer on this. I have looked at some different sources, and some of the sources say that Betty was found naked. Some of them don't say, and some of them are kind of a bit like wishy-washy. So I can't fully say that Betty's body was naked, but it has been said that it was a sexually provoked attack, and kind of coming along from this theory, so adding on to this theory, is that apparently at the time in the area where Betty lived, there was a soldier going around in a kind of soldier car. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but like an officer's car, and trying to get young girls in the car with him. There had been a couple of girls that had kind of got away from this and expressed concern to the authorities that this man had tried to get them in the car. So because of that kind of nugget of information, people kind of connected this potential man, trying to get young girls in his car, with the murder of Betty. Now, personally, I do think that is a little bit of a reach. Of course, by all means, it does happen, like Ted Bundy case it is the same. But yeah, no, that is a definite theory. I will say that there had been no eyewitness accounts of a soldier roaming around the streets. Again though, just because nobody saw him doesn't mean it didn't happen. So yeah, that theory is a solid theory in the case of what happened to Betty. So the next theory doesn't have a ton of evidence at all. I couldn't find loads of detail about it, but I did think I would add it in because I saw it on quite a few different sources. And this theory was that Betty was attacked by accident, in the sense that the attacker believed that Betty was somebody else, and the named person that they thought she was another local woman who worked in a doctor's office and who had keys to a large supply of drugs and medicine and things. So this is a theory that Betty was followed and attacked, as the woman who worked at the doctor's office lived very close to Betty, and that Betty was killed by accident. Personally, I don't believe this theory. I mean, it's of course possible, but there is just nowhere near enough evidence to suggest that that was the case. Of course, a lot of time attacks go wrong, you know, but the extent that Betty was beaten suggests far more than just like a robbery or a mugging, you know. But yeah, that is still a theory. So the next theory is another one of the like very big theories, and an author called Lyle Reed actually wrote kind of a whole book about what happened to Betty, and he personally believes that this theory is by far definitely the one that happened. And it is a little bit confusing, and again, people have different ideas on the details, but in short, it is believed that Betty was killed by a motorbike. So Lyle Reed believes that the injuries that Betty sustained were initially caused by a motorbike hitting her directly, and then the perpetrator fled the scene and returned on foot later in the night and killed her, like strangled her, beat her, killed her, just to kind of make sure that she was dead. So evidence to suggest this is of course the fact that some of her injuries are contingent with a vehicle, like with vehicle damage rather than like human damage or like a knife, you know. Apparently the wound in her lower face wasn't done by a knife, it was done by a piece of machinery, like one on a motorbike. The second piece of evidence to kind of second theory is that it was a man that Betty had rejected. Apparently there was this man that was interested in Betty, but he was married, and Betty was just like, nope, I'm not getting involved. So it was just kind of like a revenge killing. And the third kind of theory as to it was just like a complete accident, and then the person panicked and tried to just kind of finish her off because she hadn't died from the motorbike injuries, and they just kind of finished her off. So yeah, that is a very popular theory. It is kind of a messy theory. There isn't like solid strategic kind of evidence for this, but like I said, there is definitely evidence for it in the case of her injuries and of people hearing the motorbike. But yeah, obviously it's down to you guys what you think is the most likely. So now we are moving on to the final and kind of largest theory, and this is personally the theory that I believe in, and the main reason for that is just because it has the most evidence in my opinion. But again, like I implore you guys to make your own mind up with unsolved cases. It is really interesting because we all have different minds, and you may kind of listen to this case and think about something that I didn't think about, and that's what's really interesting. So do make sure to comment your kind of thoughts down below. So yeah, this is the main theory, and it was mainly promulgated by an author called Ted Duss. But a lot of people believe this theory, and basically it is said that a local man, so Betty's neighbour, a man called Eric Sterry, so Eric Sterry's daughter Delicia, I actually can't say that name, I think it's Delcia or Delicia, she claimed that her father had killed Betty, and she feels like she has kind of a lot of evidence to kind of corroborate this. So a little bit of backstory about Eric is that he was a local man, you know, he was neighbours with Betty, and he had a very clear romantic interest in Betty. He did have a wife, but she was a bit wayward. She was a party girl, like she didn't really care about her family much. She was always out. So Eric was very unhappy in his kind of relationship with her. So Eric was ex-military. He was said to have been very violent. It is said that he sexually abused his daughter, and he had been diagnosed by a psychologist as like hysterical. So he had been diagnosed with hysteria and severe anxiety. So this man was very problematic. He was violent, he had mental illness, and he was abusing his young child. So yeah, that kind of shows us what kind of person this man was. So Delcia claimed that when she was 8 years old, she saw her father from the window of her house standing in front of a bonfire naked. And it is said that she saw this on the same night that Betty was murdered. So for us, this kind of begs the question that Eric had murdered Betty and had gone home to burn his clothing that were assumably covered in blood. So that is a major facet of information. It goes on by saying that Delcia said that her father asked her to clean his shoes, and she remembers cleaning them and there being blood while she cleaned them. So those kind of two pieces of information really are very, I don't know, stark in saying that Eric could have very pattern on it that was contingent with the pattern on Betty's head. So again, this is just another piece of information that shows that this man could have very definitely been the person that murdered Betty. Furthermore, there were eyewitnesses that claimed to have seen a man in a brown suit that matched Eric's description hanging around the train station as if they were waiting for someone. And later a photo of Eric was found in a brown suit, so he owned a brown suit at one point, and this was shown to the eyewitnesses and it matched their description. So again, this is just another piece of information that kind of further suggests that Eric could have possibly been the murderer. And lastly, and really strangely, a photo of Betty was found in Eric's belongings when he died in 1997. So unfortunately, this case was just never solved. So even though there was this kind of amount of evidence found, clearly there was not enough to arrest Eric or arrest a soldier or charge them officially with the murder. So that was never confirmed, although, when you look back, so us looking back on this evidence, to me anyway, I'm just like, Eric definitely did it. I'm like, that's too much evidence, but I'm not sure of the exact time scale. I'm not sure if his daughter came forward with this information that she saw her father, and the blood on her shoes and stuff. I think that information came out later when he was already dead, and sadly you cannot charge someone, you can't arrest somebody that's dead, which is kind of the most devastating part about this case, and probably is the reason why it is unsolved, because if there were police officers on the case that believed that Eric was the murderer and they were maybe working towards having a stronger case to arrest him, or convict him, he died. So there is really not much they can do. I will say that this case is still an open case. It is a cold case, but it is open, and I believe there is a $50,000 Australian dollar reward for vital information towards the case. So it does show that this case, is still potentially awaiting a close. I mean, I'm sure it can still be concluded that Eric was the murderer. I'm sure there have been other cases wherein the person found guilty has already died, but of course it makes it so much more difficult because, innocent until proven guilty and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that is about it really for the case. I will say that quite a few people over the years have confessed to the murder of Betty, but none of them have really come to anything. They have all kind of been striked off as hoaxes. But yeah, I mean, obviously, let me know what you guys think. I do stand by the fact that I think Eric Sterry did murder Betty Shanks. The exact motivation is kind